Tindy. This is Radio Fox.
Hello, I'm Tindy and welcome to the Tindy Show on your number one station in hospital, Radio Fox. And in the talk section today, we'll be looking at cyber safety, and we'll be chatting to Suzy Tiernan, director and owner of Tiernan Marketing. And we'll see what she's got to tell us about internet safety. And then in this fever from 5 p.m, it's everything Bhangra, Bollywood and urban. And let's kick off now with a little bit of hero. Anyway, I went to see a very interesting movie recently called Sex Tape. And not that I've done anything like that, of course. And very recently, we've heard how a gang of hackers have collected and traded nude pictures of celebs by routinely breaking into Apple's iCloud system and leaked these online. And just very recently, a friend of mine was warning me about what Facebook can and cannot do. And all I can say is, wow, this is pretty overwhelming. You know, it's all worrying stuff. But rest assured, everybody, because advice is at hand. And Tindy has a guest in today that can help us with cyber safety. And I'd like to say welcome to Suzy Tiernan. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good, thank you, Tindy.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here to get us all wised up on all this cyber stuff.
It's a big subject, big topic, very current. So
definitely
hopefully I can help.
So, Suzy, tell me briefly about your background.
I'll sort of start with my A-levels, which seems like forever ago now, but I did psychology at A-level, so it's always been quite interesting to me how the social networks kind of impact on that.
Right.
I went and did media and business at university, and I actually did my dissertation on cybercrime.
Oh.
So it was a really intriguing subject to me, so to mix kind of the media and the safety side of things. And then I went and did 6 years working for an architectural practice in Leicester.
Right.
Before leaving there to set up my own business and do online marketing, because that was really where my heart lies.
Right. Okay. But obviously, doing this online marketing for, I assume, other companies and stuff, you've got to be very cyber safe, haven't you?
You have, yes, and it's always a case of checking through those safe security settings. You know, you don't want profanity on a business Facebook page, for example, so it's checking through those settings very finely and making sure they're all correct.
Oh, so you've got a fine eye for detail then.
Yes.
That's definitely a brilliant quality to have. So tell us a little bit more about, well, let's look at this recent news for a start. The nude celebrity iCloud photo leak, and celebs such as Jennifer Lawrence, Michelle Keegan, Coronation Street star, Kirsten Dunst, they've all had photographs of them leaked online of them being completely naked. Well, I don't know why you'd want to take pictures of yourself completely naked, but I'm not a celeb, so I'm not entirely sure how that works. But anyway, that's what happened. But I thought the iCloud was quite safe. So could you please tell us a little bit more about this particular case?
Yeah, it's funny actually, because you've kind of got the same opinion of my mum, in that she's saying, well, why are they taking these photos in the first place? What people get up to in the privacy of their own homes is, you know,
it's
totally
up to them.
But in terms of the iCloud and how this actually happened, it wasn't a breach of Apple's actual security system. It was the hackers went through the process of using the celebrity's email address and password, so they've actually had a chance to kind of guess that password, and that is easier than you might think, because all you need to kind of get around this, if you say you've forgotten a password, so you've got the celebrity's email address, but you type in, you know, you click on the forgotten password bit, and all you have to then enter is your date of birth and answer 2 or 3 security questions. Well, celebrities, as we know, have all their information plastered everywhere online. So from their date of birth to their family members to what school they attended, what their first pet was, those are the kind of security questions that these hackers have had to answer. So you can see why it would be relatively easy for them to find that information and get around that security system.
Wow, I didn't think of it like that, but yes, you're right, that is quite easy, isn't it, for them?
It's quite scary.
Yeah, it is very scary. Wow.
So yeah, you need to make sure, obviously, that your password is something that is really not going to be guessed.
Wow. So what kind of safety measures could somebody take in this kind of case? What kind of things could people do?
So, I mean, we've all been told don't use the same password for everything. I admittedly am one of those that doesn't do that. But having said that, I'm now changing all my systems. So make sure you have a different password for each network or each thing that you're logging into. But that password should be a combination of letters and numbers if possible. Some will allow you to use capital letters and special symbols such as a hyphen, for example, or a comma, just to mix that password up a little bit. So, right. I mean, technically you could use the same password, but just have different variations of where you use capital letters and where you use the numbers, just to make it that bit more secure if you're one of these people that just isn't going to remember those 100 passwords for your various websites.
Right, because there's a lot of websites out there nowadays, aren't there? There's loads of social, there's YouTube, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's LinkedIn, there's Tumblr, Flickr, there's Pinterest, there's just so many. Instagram, God, I think of another one every 2 minutes. It's like, wow, there's just so many, isn't there?
And they're popping up all the time.
Yeah, and I suppose people could get quite sick of, oh God, another one, I've got to remember these now. Maybe just might do the same password, which may be quite easy for all of them.
It is that ease of use why people use the same passwords. But, you know, as we've seen from the iCloud situation, if someone knows, you know, the answers to those security questions, someone who could easily find that out about you from looking at your Facebook profile, for example, if you've got on there your date of birth, how easy is it going to be for them?
Wow. I never thought of it like that, but obviously it is very, very, very easy, isn't it?
It is much easier than you might think.
Ooh, worrying. Anyway, we'll talk about a bit more safety, internet safety and so forth, just after this. And we'll play us a little bit of Gwen Stefani now. If you've just put your radio on, I am joined by Suzy Tiernan, and she is giving us advice on how to be safe on the internet. Okay, now this brings me to the wider question now of just how safe is the average user of online databases and social media. And so what other kind of things other than naked pictures, because not everybody might take naked pictures of themselves and so forth. So let's make our listeners aware now of what can actually happen out there. I mean, what type of risks are there for people who use social databases and so forth?
There are all sorts. I hate to say, but you know, without wanting to scare anyone, I think a few of the key stories, there's ones where you know, youngsters are using these sort of Second Life type websites where you create a character and you almost have a separate life online. And unfortunately, there are those out there who will log into these and groom these children and, you know, sexual predators.
Wow.
So it's quite a scary situation. Obviously, the police have now caught on to this and they put measures in place, and there are sort of people who are out there to trap these predators before they do any harm to these children who are sort of in this second world, if you like, this online world. That's kind of quite an extreme case, but it just goes to show the types of flaws that are out there. That
Can I just interrupt you 1 second here and ask you, in that particular case, which is okay, it might be a very extreme case, but it's a very serious case. How can parents out there, how can they sort of, what safeguarding measures can they take to protect their children who are online and so forth?
So it's important that parents are aware of the types of websites that their children are accessing. Obviously through various computer security systems, you can set up access so that your children are allowed to access certain sites but not other sites. So there's a level of filtering security there,
right?
So that you can filter out the websites that won't be appropriate or what have you. But obviously most sites, when you sign up, they'll ask you for your date of birth, and it will say, you know, if you're 14 or above, that's fine. There's nothing to actually stop you from making up that date of birth, unfortunately. That's just something that isn't there as a security measure. So it's very much about the parents also being aware just how their children are using the internet, maybe checking browsing history or things like that to see what they've been up to. Obviously, there is that sort of barrier there where, particularly with teenagers, they don't want their parents knowing what they're doing, and they will find ways of hiding what they're up to. So it can be quite difficult for parents, I think. And I'm saying this not as a parent myself. I'm not a parent, but I think it's really important that there is that discussion between parents and children as to the risks that are online to them.
So I suppose that's because I suppose it could be even sort of everyday kind of websites and so forth that a lot of people have. There might even be predators on those as well. So you think the parents just have to sort of have an overall sort of overview of what their child's using, and so maybe go into the room every now and again just to see what they're doing, and maybe is it noticing any changes in behaviour, and is that relevant?
Changes in behaviour, definitely. Being secretive about where they're going, who they're meeting, maybe. Potentially lying about that. As a youngster myself, I actually did meet someone offline that I had met online without telling my parents, which could have been a particularly dangerous situation.
How old were you at the time?
I was about 14 then.
That's fairly young.
So it was very young. Yeah. I worried them a lot. I deeply regret that now, obviously. Wow. But it, it's made me more aware of the dangers that are out there, even though, nothing happened to me, thankfully, but it could have done. And so this is why I've taken such an interest in cybersecurity and the things that we do online and what the social networks are doing with our data.
Wow. I mean, what other kind of things? I'm assuming you're talking about things like identity theft as well?
Identity theft is another big one. There was a case when I did my dissertation. I did a lot of research, got involved in some forums where people had been victims of identity fraud. And one particular story that sticks in my mind, and again, this is quite an extreme case, but there was a case in America where someone had their social security number and all their personal details found online. Their house was then burgled and they were attacked. All because someone had been able to get their data, use their data in a way that it shouldn't have been used. And there have been more extreme cases than that. There have been cases where people have been killed due to things that have been found online. And people have been stalked and attacked.
You're telling me this now, and I'm thinking, God, isn't this just something that happens to somebody else or in the films? How common is this type of thing, and how vigilant should we be?
I think it is a much more common problem than people might think. There are constantly cases in the news now. You hear about people having their identity stolen, or releases of people's credit card details from various sites and all that kind of thing. So I think we do need to take more care of what sort of information we put online. Particularly things like with Facebook, making sure that you've checked your privacy settings. One of the things that Facebook does quite well is changes the settings. When they make an update, they sort of reset your privacy settings. So quite often I'll see status updates from my friends saying, Facebook have done this again, they've changed this, why have they done it? And some people aren't even aware that this has happened, and that all of a sudden all of their photo albums are visible to everyone online.
I'm really glad you've told me that, because I made sure my Facebook profile was private, so only people who were my friends could see my photos. Yeah. But every now and again, I will get some random person liking a photo or making a comment on a photo, and I'm thinking, how can that person possibly have seen that photo if it's a private photo and I haven't used it as my profile picture or my cover picture? So I do get a little bit confused about that. So it's actually Facebook changing their settings every so often.
They do change them every so often. The other thing to be aware of with photos is, if one of your friends likes one of your photos, that like is then visible to their friends, that they've liked your photo. So it's always a case of checking that privacy setting so vigilantly, and making sure that it's set so only your friends can see it, and not friends of friends as well, because that's where your random likes might be coming from.
Oh, right. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking, well, what's that all about? Yeah, because I wanted to talk about Facebook in particular, because everybody's on Facebook, aren't they, these days?
They are, yes.
Yeah, because there's a quote I've got here that's actually quite interesting. I got this from the net, and it says basically, there was a recent Facebook scandal where Facebook manipulated its users' feeds, posting more negative stories on certain users' feeds than others to see what effect this would have. And it defended this by saying it was harmless, but there have been many people in this group who saw negative posts who were feeling suicidal, and the impact of those negative posts may have been disastrous. Now, that sounds very Big Brotherish to me. I mean, are we just guinea pigs for... I don't know.
Big Brother is watching us. There are... I think with that particular case, there was a bit of uproar because Facebook had done this study without telling anyone. No one knew it was happening. I will stress that there was the opposite, so people were shown more positive posts in their newsfeed.
Okay.
But for Facebook to come out after this and say, we've done this, and we don't believe that it's caused any harm to anyone, I'm not sure that they can say that positively and confidently without actually knowing those users personally. The example given there is, if someone's feeling particularly depressed or even suicidal, suddenly being shown negative posts that are going to sort of depress you even further, it's quite a scary thought as to what the consequences of those actions could have been. And Facebook can't confidently say that they weren't harmful, I don't think.
Wow. Oh, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye, isn't there?
There is.
Tell you what, we'll get back to you in just a moment. Let's play some Lenny Kravitz now, yeah?
Okay.
And I am joined by Suzy Tiernan of Tiernan Marketing, and who has a background in cyber safety and has lots of advice for us, haven't you?
Yes.
Well, hey. Now, we had just touched upon Facebook then, hadn't we?
Yes.
And don't get me started about Facebook. But see, there's another thing that I'm quite conscious with about Facebook is always updating your statuses as to where you are.
Yeah.
And would you be able to tell us why that's not the best thing to do?
Not ideal. I'll give you an example of why not. If you were to go on holiday to the other side of the world, to Australia, for example, and you put your Facebook status as, I'm away for 2 weeks, basically what you're saying is, the house is empty for 2 weeks. Anyone sort of looking at that, thinking, oh, that house is going to be empty, let's go and rob them. Let's go and burgle their house. So there is always that risk. I'm laughing, but it's not really a funny matter. There is always that risk that you do leave yourself open to attack by letting people know that you're out the house, that you're out and about, and you're not there protecting your valued items.
I mean, I think like that anyway, and I don't tell people anything on Facebook like that, or I'm here. I don't say that because I think along those kind of lines, although I am quite positive, but I think you need to be careful. It's not being negative, is it? It's just being wary of what could possibly go wrong and trying to sort of safeguard yourself against that before it happens.
It is. It's definitely a case of that. It's funny, actually, whilst I was doing some reading before I came here today, I actually found a study that revealed that women are less likely to reveal methods of how to contact them online than men.
Why does that surprise me? That does surprise me. I don't know. It's men that are not very...
me, actually.
It's men that are not very contactable.
So I don't know. I don't know whether we are generally just a bit more savvy or a bit more careful about the details that we do reveal. And there was also another study that I came across. I'm sure that, at some point you've seen online or in the news, Facebook's dying, all the teens are leaving Facebook for other networks. And a lot of people just quitting Facebook. A lot of my friends have just closed down their profiles. And apparently about 48% of people who quit Facebook do it due to privacy concerns.
Really?
So Facebook have obviously got a lot of work to do to reassure those people that their data isn't being misused. And unfortunately, some of the recent cases that we've spoken about have proven that they're not doing enough, basically. So we'll see what happens in the future, I suppose.
Wow. When I first set up my Facebook account, and I didn't have my settings on correctly, I noticed it was almost like a matrimonial site or something, or a dating website or something. And I was like, oh my God, all these people that's not what Facebook's about. Because I use Facebook for what it's intended to be. Just, catch up with friends, see their photos. It's nice to see people's out with their little kids and people's children and so forth. It's nice to see that, and
it is.
And that's all it is. But if you just take it for what it's meant to be for, it's fine. But I suppose if you take it one step further, you can get in a bit of trouble, couldn't you, if you start dating people from it and stuff like that?
You could, but there have been success stories of people meeting online and getting married, and
yeah, I guess.
So it's just about being diligent yourself about what you put out there. For me, I make sure that my privacy settings are set so only my friends really get to see what's going on in my life, so to speak. But then there is also, I use LinkedIn for the more professional side of networking. And I have had plenty of business contacts request to be my friend on Facebook, and I never do it because that's not a side of my life that I want to mix, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense.
And I'm sure for you it's much the same. You kind of keep that personal and business side of life separate.
And because the more professional stuff I use as Google, I think there's a Google one now as well.
Google Plus.
I use that from a lot of my voiceover stuff and radio stuff, and I use the LinkedIn as well, because it just makes more sense to keep all my more professional things on there.
Yeah.
But I do get sometimes quite worried about people, when they write things on Facebook and they're quite revealing, when they make statements and you think, wow, I hope they're okay. I hope they're not about to kill themselves, something like that.
Yeah.
With your psychology background, could you give us a little bit of insight into this? It's not really safe, is it, to put what you're personally thinking inside on Facebook, or is it so somebody knows and they know to get some professional help for you or something? What's your take on that?
There is that element of, there are those people out there who will bare their souls to the world, so to speak. And I think part of that is wanting people to respond to that, and that wanting to be that sort of needy side of wanting to be accepted and wanting to be sort of contacted by people who are worried about you. The other side is obviously there are those out there who just like to share everything. It's a bit of a sort of egotistical thing, I suppose.
Okay.
And then there are the other personalities who don't want everyone to know everything about them, who just kind of put things on as and when they want people to know. So, for example, getting engaged, you kind of want to tell the world about that, don't you? So there are different personality types who will use those status updates in different ways, whether that's to get some attention or just to tell the world about themselves.
Is there anything that people should be a bit wary of with their status updates, other than sort of telling people where they are?
One of the things that worries me, and that I know is a concern to some parents, new parents in particular, is from the point of view of identity fraud. New parents love to put their new baby's been born and it was on this date at this time and this weight, and a lovely picture. And I'm not saying don't do that. I love to see that. But at the same time, if that's public information available to someone who is looking for an identity to steal, you're giving them basically all the information they could want. You've got the date of birth, you've got where they were born, what time, what weight. It's too much information to give away, in my opinion.
Wow. I just never thought of it like that, ever.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. How about these other websites that are out there, these social networking websites? Is there anything in particular we should look out for with these kinds? Because there are a lot. I think I mentioned a few of them before, like Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and Pinterest and all the rest of them. Is there anything in particular we should be careful of?
certainly in terms of what images you're putting up and the images that you might think are private that potentially could be hacked into. You know, when I did my dissertation, the conclusion that I came to at the end of it was people are always going to find ways around whatever security measures you put in place. There is always going to be that ongoing battle. And I think when it comes to Facebook and other networks, it's a case of no one reads the terms and conditions, but if you actually read them, you'd see that your photos, your contact details aren't quite as safe as you might think, or you might like to think that they are.
My understanding was that when you put pictures up on Facebook, you don't own those pictures. I mean, that's just, I don't know if I'm right, if someone just told me that. Is that correct?
Essentially, yes.
Right, so Facebook actually own your pictures?
Essentially, Facebook could use your pictures for their own purposes without having to ask your permission. They aren't copyright to you.
Right.
So there is that concern that, you know, Facebook could just take whatever pictures they like and do what they want with them, essentially, without you having given consent. And essentially, they gain that by putting it in the small print. So as soon as you accept those terms and conditions, what you're essentially saying to Facebook is, here's my data, use it, please.
You know what, I think I'm clever. I don't know if I am or not, but the way I tried to get around that bit, because I heard that, I tried to make my pixels very small on my pictures, so if they wanted to use them, there's no quality in them anyway. Because I heard that they actually use somebody's baby's picture, and I don't know if it's just an urban myth or whatever, and this person went to Sainsbury's or wherever they went, and they saw their baby on a picture on a t-shirt or something, and they were horrified, but then they realised that they'd put that picture up on Facebook, and Facebook had used it, had sold it on to Sainsbury's or wherever they had sold it on to, and it was totally legitimate to do that. So what I did after that, as a result, I started making the pixels on my photos really bad. So then if anybody wanted to use them, there's no point in using them because they're such bad quality. There's no point. So, and I do that deliberately. I mean, is that me being clever, or is that me just being very naive? I don't know.
No, that is a way around it. You know, people want good quality pictures at the end of the day. If they're going to steal it to use in something, you know, I think that is one of the steps that you can take, but that's not going to be easy for everyone if they don't know how to reduce the size of a picture. I might have to make that one of my blog posts, how to reduce your image sizes to use them online. But there is software out there. There are online websites that you can use to reduce picture sizes and that kind of thing. And also, you know, particularly for businesses, putting a little copyright logo on there with their name on, so that if anyone does use that picture, it's linked back to whoever actually owns it.
That's a very good idea. You're the expert. Good ideas.
There's also, you know, again for businesses, if they've got a website, there are settings that you can do so that people, you know, when you right click on an image and it goes save as, you can actually put something in place to stop people being able to do that as well.
Okay, that's fascinating. What I'll do is we'll play another track now, and then we'll get back with some final lot of advice before 5 o'clock.
Okay.
And I am joined in the studio by Suzy Tiernan, and we've got about 5 minutes left now, and I'm going to try and get some more advice from you now. And you've been chatting about cyber safety this past hour, and now what I'd like to ask you now is, come on, let's face it, to succeed in business these days, there's a lot of networking involved, and it's genuinely nice to be connected to people on a social level as well, like on the internet. So, how can we still effectively network and keep in touch with people without all these websites? I mean, I actually do remember a time before they all existed, but now it does feel like you're getting left behind if you don't keep up with the latest thing that's going on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And what is your advice here to people who may be worried now because of what we've discussed today?
Obviously, some of what we've discussed today has been quite the most extreme cases, but it does highlight the need for us to really be aware of what we put online about ourselves. Right down from the basic details of your date of birth to, when you go on holiday and what have you. But there was actually a study carried out by the University of Chicago, which found that social networking actually plays a positive role in networking, but more as a way to facilitate a face-to-face meeting. So that is to say, yes, great, connect online, but use that as a way to gain a face-to-face meeting. So for me, for example, I will connect with people on LinkedIn who I might not necessarily know, but I will suggest arranging to go for a coffee with them, to actually meet them offline and find out more about their personality, more about them, particularly with new clients as well. I always make the effort to meet them outside of the online world so that you really get a feel for who they are, because I think what we're very good at doing is having a personality for online and a personality for offline. But I mean, bringing it back to sort of staying safe, how can we stay safe? Making sure that you use different passwords, or if you are going to use the same password, switch it up a little bit with the capital letters and numbers and things.
We're talking about general email accounts here and stuff like that, aren't we?
Yeah, from general email accounts through to your social networks, through to anything else that you really use an email address to log in for.
Okay.
There are also a lot of sites now offer two-step verification, and basically what that is, you'll have your password, but once you input your password, you'll also get a text message sent to your mobile phone, which will have a code that you then have to input as well, which just makes it that little bit more secure, because unless you've lost your phone and it's gone to someone who is trying to hack into your account, you've got that extra bit of security, because generally you'll always have your phone with you, and so you'll be the only person to get that code to be able to input it to access your stuff.
So it generally is quite good to enter your phone number into a social network. So if they ask for your phone number, it's a good idea to actually give them your phone number.
It is, if they are using it for the verification purposes.
Right.
Always be aware of what they are going to use that mobile phone number for, whether it's going to be made public or not. Generally, if it's being used for verification, they're not really going to use it for anything else. It's just for that extra security.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much. You've really opened my eyes. We could actually even go talking for another few hours. This is absolutely fascinating stuff. We may have to get you back in sometime.
I'd be happy to come back in.
Oh, thank you. Is there anything you'd like to add today?
One last thing. Obviously, I'm going to come back to Facebook now. With Facebook, obviously, we deal with logging in with our Facebook account to use other apps and services, games, for example, that you might use on Facebook. There is actually a website that I'm aware of that will scan each social network and tell you what permissions each of these apps or games has, right, to your personal data. So, and that website is mypermissions.org. And that's just a really useful site. You just put in your email address or your social media name that you're using for each network, and it will tell you what information on each one it has access to.
Okay, thank you very, very, very much, Suzy, for joining us today and opening our eyes a little bit more.
And hopefully it's helping a few people stay safe.
Yeah, definitely. Safety all the way. Thank you very much for joining us this hour.
Tindy. This is Radio Fox.